Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Asaf Ramarowski. I am the Executive Director of SPME, and it's my pleasure once again to welcome you to our webinar series. Unfortunately, under very difficult circumstances, given the latest war that Israel is currently fighting on all fronts in the north and in the south of Israel since the attacks began, a surprise attack on Saturday. We have the privilege and opportunity this afternoon to talk to my friend and colleague, Yossi Kuperwasser. Yossi is a longtime friend and colleague. He's a former Brigadier General and the head of the research division in the IDF, Intelligence Corp, and he was a former Director General. Used to be, former, yes. Maybe they want to call you back. They could use your help right now, Yossi. As well as the Director General of the Ministry for Strategic Affairs. He's been a long-time analyst and intelligence individual who knows a great deal about what's going on. I will also highlight that Yossi's been on the forefront of predicting some of the problems that we're facing today, and has been issuing some significant papers on this topic that have come out of late, even before all of this began. So we really have a chance to talk to somebody who knows what's going on the ground, specifically as it relates to the ins and outs of Gaza. Yossi will talk for about 25 minutes or so, kind of give us an update of where we are, then we'll go into Q&A. Those of you who've been with us in the past know, if you have a question, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot, type in your question via the chat. And I will do my best to get to them. If we don't get to them, I apologize in advance. And if you write us after the webinar, we'll do our best to respond in a timely fashion. So really, without further ado, Yossi, thank you again for joining us. It's good to see you, even under these circumstances, as always. And the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Asaf. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, everybody who's joining in. Mark, and everybody who's joining in. Thank you very much for putting aside some time to listen to what I'm going to speak about. I think everybody's interested in what's going on in Israel and between Israel and its neighbors and these days. So first of all, I must say that the picture is blurred. It's not clear what's going on. Right now, we are in the midst of some special situation in the north when there were in the last half an hour some reports about 15 gliders that came from Lebanon, crossed into Israel. The entire northern part of Israel is under alert, and people are supposed not to leave their homes. And at the same time, there are rockets coming from the south to the north, rockets coming from the north to the north, rocket coming from the south to the south. All of that is happening simultaneously. And of course, all of that is just the aftermath of the big event, the big terror attack that took place on Saturday, and was dragging on until actually now. We still find here and there some terrorists that were left behind and keep carrying out attacks, and there are some who are trying to get from Gaza as we speak. And the situation is extremely unstable, and everything that I'm going to say is can change within a minute. The most important thing that I can say is that everything we knew about Israel's situation until Saturday has nothing to do with the new situation. Because even if there were people who were saying that we are going to face a multi-front situation, and we can be attacked by different elements, different proxies of Iran at the same time, or step by step, it doesn't matter. We have to be prepared for a multi-front situation. Saying it is one thing, experiencing it is something totally different. Nobody anticipated the kind of attack that we were victim of on Saturday. It's an unprecedented event. Nobody thought of such a scenario. And we can speak about the intelligence failure. The intelligence failure was multifaceted as well. It was a failure of understanding the nature of Hamas. We were under the impression that Hamas is deterred, that Hamas is focusing on improving the living conditions in Gaza, and that's why it's not going to operate. We were under the impression that Hamas operationally cannot find a way to compensate for the damage done to its former investments in tunnels and in rockets, with the Iron Dome dealing with the one and the wall dealing with the other. And we were complacent enough not to notice that this terror attack was coming towards us, and nothing was done on time in order to prevent it. So there was a terrible intelligence mistake. Definitely we're going to discuss that in more length after the war and see what lessons have to be learned from that. But there was a terrible mistake. But it's beyond the mistake. It's what we experienced is not only the surprise, it is the shock of what happened. We have at least 1,200 people killed, but the numbers are going to be bigger than that for sure. Many of them are soldiers. So we have close to 200 soldiers killed by now, and the rest are civilians, of course. We are shocked by the way they were killed. It's innocent people being killed and tortured, and I don't want to repeat everything that you have seen on the social media footage that was going around, but it's terrible. And now that the IDF spokesperson has allowed journalists to enter the communities around Gaza, the pictures coming out of there are horrific. So we are in a state of mind that says, no more. This cannot happen again. Never again of 70, 80 years ago is coming back, and never again. This is the message we have to send to those savages that carried out this attack. And we are faced with an axis, not only Hamas. It's a full axis of fanatic Muslim radicals who have a distorted version of Islam that justifies killing the Jews, definitely in Israel, maybe elsewhere as well. And this is something that we have to contend with. So the immediate problem now is the situation in Gaza and the necessity to deal with Hamas. But in fact, by dealing with Hamas, we are dealing with part of the axis that they are part of, and it's the way we have to deal with it is to just decisively put an end to the threat from Gaza to Israel. And we might have to do the same thing in Lebanon as well, if depends on how the situation develops. For that, we have to mobilize everything that we have. We already mobilized the army to a large extent, and to take the necessary measures decisively, leaving the Gazans without Hamas, or leaving Hamas without the ability to do anything, or leaving Hamas without controlling the Gaza Strip. In other words, and we have not yet decided what shape exactly that this then means, but in other words, I would say that eventually Hamas will have to leave the Gaza Strip. And I was shy about it when I wrote a piece about 4 months ago that said that we should think about what's going to happen if Hamas is going to launch a new attack. And once it happens, we shall have to make sure that Hamas will not be able to rearm itself. At that time, I didn't realize how terrible this attack of Hamas is going to look like. And now that I know that, clearly we cannot just be satisfied with preventing it from rearming itself. We are just to get rid of Hamas. This means that we are already in the business of cleaning every piece of land in our territory, forming a new border that separates Gaza from us, because until some time ago, people were still crossing with the intention to carry out terror attacks. And we did those two things by and large, and we started already the offensive in Gaza, causing a lot of damage. We go from one place to another, destroy everything that somehow belongs to Hamas, and we keep doing that systematically. And we are preparing the force for ground operation that, in my mind, is going to be necessary, but right now looks as the Archimedes point that would decide whether Nasrallah is going to be pushed to the corner where he has to take action against Israel to a larger extent than what he has already done, and he's done quite a lot even by now, and whether there's going to be a need to decide the war against the axis led by Iran. Now, of course, as I said again repeatedly, the reason why we were facing this terror attack that was a product of this entire axis. The Iranians were behind it. I'm sure that Hezbollah was in the loop. The reason why we had it is that they felt that things are going their way, that the West is not posing a counter position that is going to stop them from moving forward. It was very clear with the Western attitude towards Iran, the way the West did nothing about Iran producing and accumulating 60% of its uranium, the way the West did nothing about the Iranians giving weapons to Russia for the war in Ukraine, the way that nobody did anything about the strengthening of Iran in the Middle East with its proxies and beyond, that led to the return of Assad to the fold of the Arab world, the way that nobody cared about beyond some feeble sanctions. Nobody was doing anything to topple the regime as a result of the way it treated its own people, with the story of Mahsa Amini and so on and so forth. Nobody really did anything. It seems as if the world accepts it. And the same was the image they got from what Israel was doing. Israel did not respond to a lot of challenges from all kinds of provocations. To start with, Israel decided to go for this strange gas deal with Lebanon that actually accepted everything Hezbollah asked for. And then when Hezbollah, following since the beginning of the year, started with all kinds of provocations following this, understanding that Israel is weak, Israel did not respond fiercely, not to the terror attack in Megiddo, not to the tents, not to a long list of provocations by Hezbollah. So the impression was that Israel is getting weaker. And a major contribution to that impression was the internal rift in Israel. Everybody on this axis, the Iranian axis, was expressing their joy and expectations of the fall of Israel because of the internal rift. And you can add to that two other reasons. One that has to do specifically with Hamas, their hope that by doing what they did, they are going to become to have a better position in the competition of who is going to replace Abu Mazen, who is aging slowly, and the feeling that with this act they can also challenge the Abraham Accords and especially the potential for Saudi-Israeli normalization that they see as a major threat to them. So they thought that this attack is going to do the job. They came up with all kinds of really strange excuses because they were trying to take the Al-Aqsa Mosque and turn it into an excuse, but nothing happened at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, so they still call it Tufan Al-Aqsa, the Luge of Al-Aqsa, but nobody really takes gives any credibility to this excuse. So now we are focusing on trying to punish heavily Hamas for that operation. That is something that, if successful, will be a major blow to the Iranian axis. But first of all, it has to be successful. And we are in the midst of preparing ourselves to inflicting this heavy blow on Hamas. We are, as I said, we already started, but this is not the big thing. This is still a preparatory stage, and we are preparing ourselves to do definitely more than what we did by now. We are fighting the war not alone. We are fighting the war together with the Western world that, for a change, was overwhelmed by what happened and especially the United States and President Biden stand by Israel and has its back, and everything you heard from the president last night in its very impressive speech. I think two things. First of all, Biden understands, I think, and some Western countries understand that this is not only about Israel. It's inflicting a damage on Israel and shaking its self-confidence and making the Israelis suffer, killing them, is a message to the West entirely. And it's a message that is going to embolden all the radical terror groups. So everybody should be ready to see if anybody who's going to learn the lesson of Hamas and try to do the same thing. We are seeing now the operation of Hezbollah from the north that looks a little bit similar to what we see here. And it's clear that this idea of a swarm attack is an Iranian idea. Everything we see here is something done by this group, and they are ready to face the West as part of something bigger that wants, together with Russia and China, change the world order and promote Islam within this new order, and Islam in their interpretation. And that's why I think that all the countries that have problems with radical Islamism understand that they have to be on alert and take the necessary precautions and support Israel, because if Israel wins, this entire idea that the West is weak is going to be proven wrong. But if Israel is not going to win, the repercussions are quite clear and can be very painful. So this is why I think Biden did what he did. And besides, yes, he is very committed to Israel. I'm not saying that to reduce the importance of his commitment to Israel. I think he's expressed it, and I know Biden personally, and whenever I see him, he's always repeating this story about Golda and the secret weapon and so on and so forth. It's yes, he really cares about Israel, and it's good to have somebody who cares about Israel in the White House, especially at a time like this. And in a way, it's even better to have him at this position than having his predecessor, because his predecessor would have had more difficulties in uniting the rest of the world in a moment like that. For Biden, it's relatively easy. Not that it's easy, because the Europeans, it takes time to convince them to do something, but relatively easy. That's from the American point of view. We have several other points that I want to make before I finish. One is the hostages. We have, nobody knows the exact number, but probably more than 150 hostages. It's a situation that nobody knows what to do with it. It's we've never been in a situation like that. Nobody has been in a situation like that, and it's not going to be easy to handle this problem. The Hamas, of course, is trying to use it in order to deter us from taking harsh measures against them. I believe that the government is going to adopt a policy saying we fight Hamas as if there are no hostages, and we deal with the hostages as if there's no war with Hamas. But whether this policy can hold if Hamas starts to execute hostages, I don't know. The situation here is not easy, to say the least, and we'll see how this develops. The idea that we have adopted so far is that we put so much pressure on Hamas, and we hope that this is going to convince them that if they want to see the pressure eased a little bit, they would rather release the hostages, at least some of them. We close the supply of fuel, supply of electricity, supply of food, and supply of water. You can't go much farther than that. So we'll see how far they can survive with these conditions. But you know, these people are crazy in our terms. They have their own logic, and they they might try to survive like that for a while. In Lebanon with Arafat, it worked successfully in 1982. Let's see if it works with the Sinwar and the Def this time. This is starting only today. We'll see how it develops in the coming days. This is a major question mark. We remember in this respect what President Biden said yesterday, that we fight by the law. And we have to make sure that we do that because we cannot afford. First of all, it's not a good idea not to do that. And secondly, we cannot afford misunderstandings with the Americans at this point. We need them for supply of weapons and ammunition and all of that. We want to be on the same page with the United States. I'm saying it because it's not easy. Once you see the pictures coming from the envelope of Gaza, you say to yourself, why should I behave according to the law? Let's just kill them all. And let's kick them out of there and take harsh measures and take steps against civilians as well. Because those civilians are those who are celebrating in the streets in such a terrible, disgusting way. And they give away candies because so many Israelis were killed in such a savagery way. These are the civilians we're dealing with. And there's not going to be a change in the way they behave towards Israelis because this is the education they get. They still employ the pay-for-slay system. This is not going to change anytime soon. Last point that I want to make is about the Israeli Asbara. It's the cognitive warfare. The government is we've just formed a unity government, and I hope from now on it's going to function better. But until now, with the exception of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense, and maybe one or two other ministers, those ministers that were supposed to carry the heavy burden of Hasbara are doing very little. Not a very impressive way. The civilians are doing, the NGOs are doing much more than, and the ordinary civilians are doing much more than the government does. And it's really frustrating. And there's a big question here whether we should use the footage, the terrible footage, or not. I'm saying it's out there anyhow. Yes, let's use it because this is going to help us convince people for not only for tomorrow but for the long run. Who are the people we are sleeping in bed with? It's that's something that people should know, because otherwise we are not going to get the sympathy of the world for a long time. It's once the pictures from Gaza are going to come out, once we start a ground operation, the world will be more ready to accept the Palestinian story. And this is a reason why we have to be more ready to show the truth. That's my 25 minutes. Thank you.
Great, Yossi, thank you for that as always, and thank you for everything you're doing. Obviously, we're on the informational war. We're here to help in any way we can. I was remiss early on when I introduced you. I not by intention. Joining us this afternoon is also the president of SPME, Mark Clark. So I also want to introduce him to our webinar and give him the prerogative to take the first question, and then we'll pass it on. We'll go to the audience with the time that we have. So Mark, thank you for joining us as always, and of course, I'll let you have the floor.
Thank you, Asaf and Yossi. Thank you for your presentation. It's hard for me not to call you General. So if I refer you as General, please accept that. I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. So even these many years later, 50 years later, I'm still.
Well, Mark, don't demote him. He's a Brigadier General.
Well, no, general is that's even higher.
Every general is a general.
That's
all
right. That's okay. So I was on a podcast yesterday answering questions about what's going on from a security perspective too. And I want to frame it this way and then have your comments on it, because it ties into the question of, was this just an intelligence failure, or, this is where it's being, the criticisms occurring on Israel. To me, I see it as a strategic failure, a tactical failure, and mainly a policy failure, which funneled down to a military alert failure, meaning there was no preparation on the border. And then, so what I mean by strategic failure is that it looks like Hamas successfully deceived the government of Israel into believing it was only focused on economic issues, or the government was willing to believe that issue, right? Which led to, and this I see because I go back to Gulf War I, the Bush administration interpreted Saddam's move towards Kuwait as just a threat, but not a real action. So you could see intelligence, but you misinterpreted it. A tactical failure is obviously you didn't detect what was going to happen when it happened. Military alert failure, obviously there was very few military people organized in that area at that right place. So, and then because it's a policy failure, policy preferences interfered with all this. So it's not strictly an intelligence failure, but is there because of all this an over-reliance, like the US, is there an over-reliance on the technical means of collection? That's how Hamas was able to get around, meaning, sensors and detectors and tunnel detection and overhead imagery. That policy failure, that strategic failure, did that inform all these other failures? Would you make sense of it that way?
Well, it was a systemic failure. Everything was a failure. Everything. And you described it so well, I don't want to repeat what you were saying. That was the systemic failure. And it began, first of all, when you look at it, it's first of all an intelligence failure because we didn't have information, the basic information. In 73, we had plenty of information we didn't understand. We didn't want to understand and we didn't understand. Here, we didn't even have the information to start with. It's 1,000 people were going to the border in order to carry out terror attacks, and we didn't notice them. And none of them was probably an informant of ours, right? In 73, we had Ashraf Marwan telling us a couple of hours before the war that there's going to be a war. Double agent, no double agent, I don't know, but at least even the double agent gives you information. It's here we didn't even have a double agent. It's that would tell us that it's going to happen at 10, and actually it happened in 7. There was nothing like that. This is I'm talking just about the collection and coverage. This is terrible. This is just terrible. Just way before we come to the operational problem, because we managed to close all the ways of action of Hamas that were used by the organization in 2021, 2 years ago. Operation Guardian of the Walls. They were prepared. They started the war then too with rockets to Jerusalem, and we were surprised by the lessons were not probably learned enough from that surprise, but we were surprised. And but during the war, we were well prepared operationally, and we really were able to thwart all the attempts to the underground tunnels, the UAVs, the naval capabilities that they have developed, and of course the rockets with our Iron Dome that is still functioning well. We were able to really frustrate Hamas, and we thought, okay, you're now frustrated, that's why it's deterred. And we didn't understand that fighting a war against terrorists is an ongoing learning competition. And you should never sit on your laurels. It's the enemy is learning, and I tell you, I know Hamas quite well. They were learning always. They were always learning, and this time they were learning again. and studying what can we do. So they close all of that. So what is the way we are going to carry out the attacks? Because this is the identity, this is the nature, this is the purpose, this is the raison d'etre. It's killing Jews, and that's what they exist for. And they must have another way if this way doesn't work. And we should have been sitting in red teams, breaking our heads. What are the options? What are they going to do next? What can they take from the Iranians? What can they take from Hezbollah? We know that Hezbollah has prepared something called the Radwan force that is deployed along the border, a very big force of special forces that's supposed to do exactly what the Hamas did. And Hezbollah doesn't hide its intention to take over villages next to the border. And why not Hamas? And how come we were not totally unprepared for this option? This is extremely frustrating. I mean, we might have broken our heads and come up with other ideas that they didn't find could be. But I don't know. I'm not in the intelligence right now, but we definitely didn't think about this option, because had we thought about this option, we would have told our operational people, listen, you have to be prepared for that at any given time. This can happen within short notice, and at any given time we have to have units prepared in every community. And we should, if we hold a festival, this music festival, we should bring a battalion to protect it, and not some civilians, some unarmed civilians, and a few policemen. This is on the border. Now you should just read Moshe Dayan eulogy for Roy Rothbard in 55. He said exactly that. Don't ever, what is going on? Because this guy went after cattle to bring it back, and was tortured and killed by the Arabs from Gaza. And Dayan said that this is never going to stop. This hatred is never going to stop. These are people are going to keep looking for ways to kill us. That's we cannot go. Somebody can go by himself to pick some cattle. What's going on here? And that's the thing that was missing here. That the operational side, and on the strategic side, both the government and the security system were under this impression that since they are deterred, since they don't have an operational plan, we can keep them quiet. This entire idea that let's feed them and make them happy. And since they are deterred, we are going to gain more and more quiet, longer period of quiet. This was the strategic approach. I wrote this piece 4 months ago that said, no, let's realize that this is not going to last for long. And since I understand that we cannot take the initiative by ourselves out of the blue sky, let's at least be prepared for the next time, and let's give some strategic thinking to what are we going to do next time this is going to happen. And we didn't do that. Didn't spend the time on strategically thinking about the future. Now we have to think about. So suppose we take over the Gaza Strip. What are we going to do? Are we going to rule it ourselves? Are we going to find some relatively moderate people to rule it? Are we going to bring the PA from Ramallah? What are we going to do with this? But one thing is clear: we cannot keep living next to Hamas. And in Hebrew we say the diskette has changed, it's turned around. I don't know how you say it in English, but there's a major change in the understanding and thinking about the problem. And we understand that the situation is different, but the failure was on all levels. The troops were not prepared. We didn't think about the vulnerabilities of the system of defense. We thought about the vulnerabilities that relate to underground break, but we didn't think about the vulnerabilities of breaking overground. And that's why we became softened on the question of whether the people of Gaza can get close to the fence. You know, there is something called the perimeter that says that that Gazans should not get close to the fence less than 300 meters. But this was the rule for a while, and then it was eroded. and the Hamas people came closer and closer to very often all these riots along the fence. And this enabled them to get close without out noticing and putting all kinds of preparations for the attack. And of course, this idea of the gliders should have been in our mind. And I don't know if there was a cyber attack or not. There are some people who say yes, there are some people who say no, this is going to be checked. But it's clear that the entire system of the observers and their ability to shoot from their offices, it sees, it shoots, the IOI in Hebrew system didn't come into the play. It was neutralized by Hamas. That's you know, they were living next to the border for such a long time. They knew how to take care of the fence and overcome it, and this swarm idea that, as I said, in my mind they took it from the Iranians, because this is an Iranian idea that was already implemented in the Iranian Navy, was playing an important role. And I'm sure that the Iranians were involved in the planning, and of course they were in the guiding, and of course they were involved in supplying the arms and the weapons and the munition. And there are some very advanced, or relatively advanced RPGs, Iranian-made, that were in the hands of these people that were used in order to set ablaze the bunkers. It's they were extremely well prepared and equipped. So and all of that, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not getting daily reports from the intelligence, but nobody says yes, I knew about it. So if nobody says yes, I knew about it, they probably didn't know. And we shall check all this issue later on, because we have to learn the lessons, because we cannot afford being so ignorant about the situation next door. And that's not to say that we don't have many assets, intelligence assets in Gaza. We do have, but they're in the wrong place. I can tell you that I was the chief intelligence officer of Central Command before the Second Intifada. I was working with all the units that collect information and saying to them what exactly I need in order to know what's going on. And I was not at all surprised. We were blamed that we were too well prepared. That's what the left was trying to blame us for something. They were too well prepared. That cannot be said about what happened here. And it's frustrating, because these are in general terms the imagination failure about how they're going to do it, the misunderstandings, the strategic misunderstanding. These are all things that in one version of another are things that happened to us in 73, and we were just now marking the 73. You know, today I was supposed to hold this, amongst my other hats that Asaf couldn't mention because I have too many. I'm also the head of the Institute for the Research of the Methodology of Intelligence. Okay, it's a civilian organization, and we were supposed to hold today a big conference in Tel Aviv University about the study of intelligence in Israel, how we should improve study of intelligence in Israel, and so on and so forth, marking 50 years of the failure of intelligence in Yom Kippur. And fortunately, it happened before that, because it would be much more embarrassing if it would happen tomorrow. So we canceled the conference. But really, this is extremely frustrating. That's I thought we learned the lessons in a better way. That's now, having said all of that, it's not only intelligence failure, as I said before, it's a systemic failure. This approach was shared also by the leadership, by everybody. I can tell you, I came to some of the key figures in this respect with my paper about the need to strategize what's going to happen when Hamas is going to do something. And I was pushed aside. Well, we have more important things to do. this is where we stand, and it's frustrating. And fortunately, we are now uniting, and we are strong enough, to overcome such a situation. That's what we are doing right now, and I do believe very much so that in the end we shall prevail, we shall win, because we have the commitment, and we have this secret weapon that Biden was referring to. We shall win. We don't have any other option. But the price is already extremely high, and it's going to be higher.
Thank you. Asaf, I know you wanted to get to our audience too. Sure.
Yeah, I want to make sure that obviously, with Yossi's limited time, that we get to everybody. But let me go to the audience, and also I know Alex has a question. If we have more time, I'll ask questions as well. But let me start with our other colleague and friend Donna Devine, who is asking about about the question about the drones, Yossi, and she's asking, how did Hamas get the drones that took out the sentries in the fence? Was there not any kind of potential, looking at those threat assessments as far as drones and the sensors and the failures or the limitations of the sensors and the fence?
Well, yes. How did Hamas get the drone? How did Hamas get its entire weaponry, including the drones? I think that the fact is that with all the respect to the efforts of Egypt to close the border, they do not do a good enough job, and the weapons are coming in without much interference. It's all these weapons. Hamas is equipped to its teeth with all kinds of relatively advanced weapons that they get mainly from Iran, but also from all kinds of other places. They also try to smuggle stuff through our Kerem Shalom crossing, but most of the stuff is coming from Egypt. And this doesn't come as a surprise for us. We know that they have it. They probably train mainly in Iran. They send people through Egypt to Iran, and where they get training and come back and rejoin their forces in Gaza. And this is how these weapons come in.
Good, thank you, Alex. Let me turn it over to you. Your question.
Sure. Well, thank you for the presentation, which is comprehensive and encouraging yet depressing. I want to ask one question about intelligence failure, which, as you noted, as Mark noted, is multifaceted. It's within the government, but it's also cultural outside the government. And one of the things that has been the most striking and shocking to me has been the very ISIS-like behavior of Hamas during this attack, using rape as a weapon, slaughtering hostages, kidnapping children, murdering children, all things that we saw, unfortunately, in Syria and Iraq. But I don't remember anybody ever really predicting this kind of thing from Hamas. Yes, Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood offshoot. Yes, they're basically fundamentalist Muslims. And these are, in a sense, orthodox Islamic tactics in Islamic history and from Islamic sources. But who expected Hamas to actually behave this way? We've seen examples of ISIS flags being found on dead Hamas terrorists. But who was thinking of this, if anybody?
First of all, this was not only Hamas, it was also Islamic Jihad, Palestinian Islamic Jihad carrying out these operations. And there was, they were followed by a mob of people coming from Gaza on the way to carry out the attack. Once they learned about the open way to the communities, they joined the Hamas terrorists in killing and causing all this damage. So it's not only Hamas. But yes, you gave the answer yourself. It's the Sheikh Kardawi at the time made the difference for Muslim Brotherhood. He said, we are against carrying out terror attacks against civilians in the West, and we are against suicide bombing. But when it comes to the Jews in Israel, this is allowed, and all the methods that of terrorism that are used by ISIS in other areas, unlike what Qaradawi thought, were allowed for the Hamas and for the terrorists that are performing terror attacks against Israelis in Israel. So this was no. They never had this situation. Usually, when they carry out an attack, they shoot and run away. Never before they were in a situation where they were actually controlling for quite a long time, couple of hours, the area, and able to perform all these terrible atrocities. That was not the case in the past. In the past, it was usually very rapidly running away after carrying out an attack or exchanging fire with Israeli forces. So this, also from that point of view, this is an unprecedented situation.
Great. Great. Thank you for that. Yossi, I have a question, as far as, to one of the points that you mentioned in your presentation. You spoke about, the Hasbara element. You spoke about the information that's happening, outside of Israel. You are one of the few people that I know, who understands what's going on inside of Israel and what goes outside of Israel. And you have been, you've been clear with me over the years, telling me correctly that Israel has been focused solely on the threat of Iran. Now we know we have the Iranian footprint and all of this, as well as the Brotherhood. The reactions to the war now, and the adulation and the love for the Brotherhood, Hamas in particular, on American college campuses has now been, is outpouring with love and adulation, despite what we're seeing. Are you seeing, at least as a result of what we've seen now happen, is there an appreciation or a beginning of an appreciation to listen to the intelligence and the work that you've done, as far as what's going on outside of Israel and the threats vis-a-vis this cognitive warfare that you called correctly, as far as information, the Brotherhood in the States and whatnot, to take that into consideration, that is part of the puzzle that led to all of this?
Well, my answer would be that it should be the case, but I'm not sure, because I saw how weak the reaction was in the first few days. Maybe it takes time to get ready. But people understand, those who are in this business understand that this is unfortunately an opportunity to do something that goes beyond just the ongoing tit-for-tat that takes place in this field of cognitive warfare. This is an opportunity to convince the world that, and it's easy to convince because it's not only a threat for us, and what you see is so horrific, that Israel is also threatened by these vicious people, and I hope this is something that is going to be used in order to have an impact beyond the time of the war. The war is maybe not that short, but anyhow, the question is what's going to happen after the war, and I hope it's going to have an impact way beyond the war. That would be not only against Hamas, but also against the other elements that comprise this axis of evil. Because I cannot, I'm saying to myself, how can it be that the United States continue to have regular relations with the state of Qatar when Qatar is hosting the entire leadership of Hamas, and they sit there and celebrate the terrible terror attack, and the United States still keeps the same kind of relations with Qatar. It's this is something wrong there. I say to myself, how come that the United Nations have not declared Hamas a terror organization? I ask myself, how come that the West doesn't take harsher steps against Iran that glorifies the attacks of Hamas? These are things that we should use this cognitive warfare in order to promote. I was very impressed with the declaration, the resolution coming from the Congress, with almost everybody showing support and standing behind Israel, and I was very impressed with the money coming and with the ammunition coming. This is all very impressive, but cognitively we have to make the change. It's not easy even for Israelis. Israelis are still saying, "Oh, but we have to care about the Palestinians." Who are those Palestinians? There's this thinking that PA is better than Hamas. Yes, it's better than Hamas, but still, PA pays salaries to the people who carry out these terror attacks, because these were terror attacks that were performed in the context of the struggle against Israel. So it's we have to realize and understand it, and then make more and more people know about it and comprehend it.
Great, thank you. Let me go into some of the questions in the audience. You've covered some of the topics that were addressed now. One of the questions that's been going on here,
I have to finish by 8, so
okay, no problem.
8 my time. I have to move into another
interview. I know. All right, no problem. So I'll take one more question, so you can also get a water break in between all of these things, and we'll let you go on to your way. You mentioned this in your remarks, but there was one question that came up here as far as, again, the strategic goals of dismantling Hamas, and the question of the loss of life, as far as Israeli soldiers, as far as how Israel is going to take doing this, as far as the urban warfare versus the use of the IAF. I mean, that comes up a lot, and obviously to the credit of Israel for maintaining, innocent civilians, and trying to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants, which Hamas, as we know, does not do. Your take on that, as far as now, as far as the need to dismantle Hamas ASAP versus, and how, if you want to say something about those issues.
Yeah, I think we are going to continue working according to the international law, because with all your blood is extremely hot when you see what happened. And you cannot remain cool, but still we have to make sure that we don't lose our commitment to being human beings. And it's not easy, but we did lower a little bit in the past we were doing things beyond what was necessary, knocking on the roof, calling people to evacuate, and all these kind of things. I think nowadays we can be less committed to playing beyond what is necessary, and we, with our bombardments, cause a lot of damage. We target only Hamas targets, but Hamas is all over the place. So it's we cause a lot of damage, and there are a lot of people leaving Gaza, and that's what we want to see. We advise every person that believes that he's an innocent guy and wants to remain safe to leave Gaza and to leave the urban areas and move towards Egypt. That's our advice, and they can save their lives very easily. We did the same thing with our people. We evacuated a lot of places in order to not put people in harm's way, and we hope that the Gazans will do the same. We really don't want to hit anybody who's not playing a role in this war. Let them stay safe.
Right.
And it's good for the cognitive warfare, but it's good also for our consciousness, for our cultures. So.
Yossi, I want to thank you really for taking the time to talk to us this afternoon, and thank you for all you do. Hopefully we're hoping for better days all around. But I really thank you for taking the time to talk to us and to try to unpack these very difficult issues and a very difficult situation. And we really hope that that this will be successful and we can move on to better days all around. As always, I want to thank Mark and Alex for joining me this afternoon. I want to thank you, the audience, for coming. We will, of course, look out for future webinars. We're going to be doing our best to tackle these issues as they develop on a day-to-day basis, and we will take it from there. So really, Yossi, thanks again. Have a good evening on your time, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Mark, and yourself. Bye.
Thank you. Are we off?
Not yet. I'll call you.
Okay, thanks.